a serpent so vast it rings the entire world, biting its own tail beneath the ocean. When at last it lets go, the sky will burn. Somewhere in a distant river, a coiled god sleeps upon the rainfall of an entire kingdom. Wake him gently, and the harvest lives. In a cave beneath a mountain, a worm lies curled on a bed of stolen gold, counting every coin over and over in the dark. A monster with 3 heads that speaks like a man, breathes fire like a furnace, and carries kings' daughters away into the smoke. Different rivers, different centuries, peoples who never met, who never traded a single word between them, and yet every one of them dreamed the very same beast, a creature of scale and coil, of storm and flame, of hoarded treasure and drowning flood. We gave it 1,000 names and 100 faces. The Babylonians, the Greeks, the Norse, the Chinese, the Aztecs an ocean away. All of them painted a dragon on the walls of their imagination. But here is the mystery. In the West, the dragon was a thing to be killed. In the East, a thing to be worshipped. The same beast, greed and evil to one half of the world, wisdom and blessing to the other. How on earth can that be? This is the story of every great dragon humanity ever imagined, where they came from, who dared to face them, and why we could never stop dreaming of them. By the end, you'll know them all. The chaos-serpents, the treasure worms, the rain-bringers, the world-enders, and why the East revered the very same creature the West rose up to slay. To find the first dragon, we must go back nearly 4,000 years, to the mud-brick cities of Mesopotamia, where the whole world began in salt water and chaos. Her name was Tiamat, the primordial ocean, the mother of the gods. And when her own children rose against her, she became something monstrous. The Babylonian epic Enuma Elish tells how Tiamat spawned an army of venomous serpents and dragons and set the storm god Marduk against the very fate of creation. Marduk snared her in a net of winds, drove an arrow deep through her, and split her enormous body in 2, like a shellfish cracked open. From one half he raised the heavens, from the other the earth. Her eyes became the Tigris and Euphrates. The world itself was built from a dragon's corpse. Beside her marched the Muchu, the furious snake, a scaled dragon with a serpent's neck, a lion's forelegs, and an eagle's talons, glazed in blue upon Babylon's great Ishtar gate. Here already is a pattern that will haunt the entire world, a storm god, a serpent of chaos, and a battle to hold back the dark. Scholars call it the Chaos-Kampf. You will meet it again and again in lands that never heard Babylon's name. The order of the cosmos, forever balanced on the death of a dragon. Sail west now, to the Nile. Each night the sun god Ra descends into the underworld, and each night a monster lies waiting for him in the dark. Apep, the Greeks called him Apophis, a serpent of pure chaos, miles long, coiled across the river of the dead, hungry to swallow the sun. Every dawn was a victory. Ra's defenders speared the great snake back into darkness, and the sun rose only because the dragon had been beaten one more time. Egyptian priests burned wax models of Apep and cursed his name aloud, waging ritual war against a serpent they believed could end the light of the world. North, along the Canaanite coast, they told of Ladon, a twisting 7-headed serpent of the sea, crushed by the storm god Baal in the deep. And in the Hebrew scriptures, that same sea dragon surfaces as Leviathan, a coiling monster of the abyss whom, the book of Job warns, no man dares to rouse. Leviathan breathes smoke and fire, laughs at iron spears, and only God himself can master it, the raw chaos of the ocean given scales and a will. Now travel far east to the hymns of the Rigveda, older than 3,000 years, and the ancient pattern appears yet again. The serpent Vritra had coiled around the mountains and swallowed all the world's waters, holding the rivers hostage, choking the whole earth into drought. Then Indra, the thunder god, drank the sacred Soma, seized his Vajra, the thunderbolt, and struck. The serpent split, and the freed waters roared to the sea like cattle set loose. A storm god, a serpent hoarding the waters of life, a single blow that saves creation. From Babylon to Egypt to the Ganges, the same dream, told in a dozen tongues. The Greeks inherited this ancient war and filled their world with dragons, dracontes, great serpents that guarded, menaced, and died beneath the swords of heroes. At Delphi, before it was Apollo's holy place, a monstrous she-serpent named Python coiled around the sacred spring, guarding the very navel of the earth. The young god Apollo came with his silver bow and loosed arrow after arrow until the great serpent lay still, and the oracle of Delphi became his own. At the western edge of the world grew a tree of golden apples, and around its trunk was wound Ladon, a 100-headed dragon that never once slept. It fell to Heracles to steal those apples, and to do it he had to slip past the coils of a dragon that guarded them with every one of its 100 eyes. In the swamps of Lerna lurked the Hydra, a many-headed water serpent whose curse was cruel and simple, cut off one head, and 2 more grew screaming in its place. Heracles beat it only with fire, searing each stump before it could sprout, until at last the one immortal head was buried, still hissing, beneath a great stone. And in far Colchis, across the Black Sea, a sleepless dragon coiled around the golden fleece, its eyes burning like coals through the shadowed sacred grove. Jason won the fleece only when the sorceress Medea sang the dragon into sleep and dripped enchanted drops upon its wide, unblinking eyes. Above them all loomed Typhon, the most terrible of all, a storm made flesh, 100 serpent heads writhing from his shoulders, who nearly toppled the gods themselves. Zeus met him with 100 thunderbolts and buried the shrieking serpent titan beneath a mountain. Etna, whose fire, they said, was Typhon's rage, still burning below. Sail north now, into the cold, to the Norse, whose imagination bred the mightiest serpents of all, wound through the very roots of the universe. Encircling the whole of the mortal world, deep beneath the ocean, lay Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, grown so immense that it gripped its own tail. The thunder god Thor was its oldest enemy. Once he hooked the serpent while fishing, and very nearly hauled the world ender up out of the churning sea. But their true reckoning waits at Ragnarök, the end of all things, where Thor will slay the serpent, walk 9 last steps, and fall dead from its venom. There is that pattern once more, the storm god and the world serpent, locked in a duel that not even the gods themselves can survive. At the base of the world tree Yggdrasil gnaws another dragon, Níðhöggr, the malice striker, forever chewing the deepest root, forever dragging creation toward collapse. But the dragon the North loved best was smaller and far more human in its sin. His name was Fáfnir. Fafnir was none born a monster. He was a dwarf, until a cursed hoard of gold, stolen from the gods, slowly poisoned his heart with greed. He murdered his own father for the treasure, then crawled off to a lonely heath, where his lust for gold twisted him, scale by scale, into a venomous dragon. There he lay upon his glittering hoard, breathing poison, until the hero Sigurd dug a pit across his path and thrust a sword up into the passing beast. When Sigurd tasted the dragon's blood, he suddenly understood the language of the birds, and learned from them that the cursed gold would one day doom him too. Here the dragon means something new, not the sea, not the storm, but greed itself. A soul so consumed by treasure that it stops being a person at all. That idea traveled to England, into the oldest English epic, Beowulf. In its final chapter, an aged king faces one last horror. A thief steals a single cup from a barrow and wakes the dragon sleeping on its buried gold. Enraged, the beast takes to the night sky and burns the kingdom. Old Beowulf goes out to meet it and slays the dragon, but its venomed bite is the death of him, a hero and a dragon falling together into legend. By the Middle Ages, the dragon had become the great enemy of Christian knighthood, and no story spread wider than that of St. George. A dragon, they said, had taken a whole city hostage, demanding sheep, then men, then at last the king's own daughter, led out trembling to the water's edge. The night George rode in, drove his lance clean through the beast, and led it, tamed and cowed, on the princess's own girdle back into the city. He would kill it, he promised, if the people accepted his faith, and so the dragon fell, and one of the great legends of the West was born. But George's tale was a Christian legend, written down centuries after the man himself, layered onto far older stories of gods and heroes slaying serpents. In the misted mountains of Wales they told a stranger tale, of two dragons buried beneath a hill, one red, one white, locked in an endless underground war. The boy prophet Merlin revealed them to a doomed king. The white dragon was the invading Saxon, the red dragon the Briton, and the red would one day win. That red dragon, Drag Gauche, still flies today on the flag of Wales, perhaps the only dragon in all the West that an entire nation proudly claims as its own. Medieval Europe bred a whole bestiary of them. The wyvern, two-legged and barb-tailed, coiled across coats of arms and rippling battle standards. The lindworm, a long, limbless serpent dragon, slithered through Germanic and Scandinavian tales, poisoning wells and swallowing armored knights whole. Whatever their shape, the Western dragon carried the same meaning, a thing of menace and evil, a test of courage, a monster the hero was bound to destroy. East now, into the deep forests of the Slavs, where the dragon took the name Zime, and here it did something no Western dragon quite managed. It spoke. Zime Gornik rose from the folk songs of the Rus, a dragon with 3 heads, sometimes more, each mouth breathing fire, each one a cunning, lying tongue. He burned villages, stole away princesses, swore solemn oaths, and broke them. Not a mindless beast, but a monstrous, scheming person clad in scales. And when a hero severed one of his heads, another simply grew back. So the warrior Dobrynya battled him for 3 long days before the serpent finally fell. In Poland, they told of the Wawel dragon who terrorized old Krakow from a cave beneath the royal hill, devouring cattle and young maidens alike. No knight could kill it, until a clever cobbler left out a sheep stuffed with sulfur. The dragon swallowed it whole, burned with a raging thirst, and drank the river until it burst. And now we cross into another world entirely, for in the East, almost everything you have just learned about dragons turns completely upside down. In China, the dragon, the Long, was never the enemy. It was the most auspicious creature in all of creation, a giver of blessing and rain. Picture it, not a bat-winged, fire-breathing brute, but a long, sinuous serpent body with the antlers of a stag, the mane of a lion, and the claws of an eagle. And here is the great surprise. The Chinese dragon has no wings at all. It does not need them. It rides the clouds and the storm by its own celestial power. The Long was a creature of water, of rivers, of seas, of the rainfall itself. To the farmer, the dragon was not death. It was life falling from the sky. Ruling those waters were the dragon kings, the Longwang, 4 great dragons, one for each of the 4 seas that were said to surround the world. Aoguang of the east and his brothers of the south, west, and north dwelt in glittering palaces beneath the waves, commanding the tides and the rain-heavy clouds. In times of drought, whole villages prayed and paraded to the dragon kings, begging the great serpents to open the heavens, for the dragon held the rain in its keeping. Often the dragon was shown chasing a luminous, flaming pearl, a symbol of wisdom, of the moon, of spiritual power, of the very treasure of enlightenment. This was no hoard of stolen gold. The Eastern dragon's treasure was not greed, it was knowledge and the life-giving power of water itself. Above all, the dragon was the emblem of the emperor. He sat upon the dragon throne, wore dragons embroidered upon his robes, the Son of Heaven, marked by the sacred beast. There was even a legend of pure hope at the Dragon Gate on the Yellow River. Any carp that could leap the roaring falls would be transformed into a dragon. From that story comes an ancient promise that through struggle and perseverance, the humblest creature can rise to greatness. In the East, the dragon was something to become. The reverence flowed outward across all of Asia. In Japan, the dragon became the Rhine, a water spirit of rivers, of lakes, and of the deep, restless sea. Ryujing, the dragon king of the sea, dwelt in a coral palace far below the ocean, ruling the ebb and flow of the tides with a pair of magic jewels. But Japan kept an older, darker serpent too, Yamata no Orochi, a colossal monster with 8 heads and 8 tails, its body sprawling across 8 whole valleys. Each year it devoured a maiden, until the storm god Susanoo filled 8 vats with strong rice, let the 8 heads drink themselves to sleep, and struck them off one by one. And in the serpent's severed tail, Susanoo found a sword, Kusanagi, the grass cutter, which became one of the 3 sacred treasures of the Japanese imperial line. There is the chaos camp yet again on the far side of the world, a storm god, a monstrous serpent, and a nation's crown drawn out of its death. In Korea, the dragon, the Yong, was likewise a benevolent bringer of rain and a guardian of water, and many tales told of humble creatures who rose to become dragons. And in Vietnam, the dragon lay at the very root of the people. Their oldest legends held that the nation itself was born of a dragon. The dragon lord Lik Long Quyen, they said, wed the mountain fairy Eu Si Cha, and from their union came 100 children, the first ancestors of the Vietnamese people. Across the whole of the East, then, the dragon was no monster to be slain. It was ancestor, emperor, and rain-giver, a blessing woven into the identity of entire civilizations. And then, an ocean away, in a land the old world would not meet for centuries, the serpent appeared once more, winged not with leather, but with feathers. In Mesoamerica they worshipped the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl to the Aztecs, Kukulkan to the Maya, a serpent robed in the shimmering green plumes of the Quetzal bird. He was a creator and a teacher, the meeting point of earth and sky, who gave humankind maize, the calendar, and the very arts of civilization. At the Great Pyramid of Chichen Itza, twice each year the setting equinox sun casts a rippling shadow down the stairway, and a serpent of light seems to descend the stone. Here, as in the East, the serpent dragon was no enemy to be destroyed, but a giver of wisdom and life, honored across the land as a god. So return now to the mystery we began with. Why did the very same beast come to mean such opposite things to the two halves of the world? In the West, from Babylon to Greece to the Christian knights, the dragon was chaos, the sea, the drought, the hoard, the evil that a hero was born to destroy. To slay the dragon was to bring order out of chaos, light out of the dark. The Western dragon existed to give the hero something worth conquering. But in the East, the dragon was the water itself, the rain, the river, the flood that fed the rice. And you do not slay the rain, you kneel and you pray to it. Perhaps it comes down to the land itself. Where floods brought only ruin, the water serpent became a demon. Where rains brought the harvest, that same serpent became a god. Or perhaps it is simpler still. The dragon is the largest, oldest fear we could ever imagine, and each culture quietly chose whether to fight that fear or to worship it. But notice what unites them all. On every continent, in cultures that never met, humanity conjured the same impossible beast, the serpent, grown vast, given power over life and death. A creature of the deep water and the high storm, of hoarded treasure and hidden wisdom, wound around the roots of the world in nearly every mythology on earth. Some scholars think we inherited it, a deep, buried memory of the snake, the predator that once stalked our earliest ancestors, magnified across the ages into myth. Others say the dragon is simply the shape our minds give to chaos itself, to everything that is vast and old and forever beyond our control. Whatever the reason, the dragon may be the most universal creature we ever dreamed, slain in the West, enthroned in the East, but everywhere always remembered. From Tiamat, split apart to make the sky, to the carp leaping the dragon gate, from Fáfnir on his cursed gold, to the emperor upon his dragon throne. We looked into the dark, at the ocean, the storm, the great unknown, and every one of us saw the same pair of ancient, burning eyes staring back. And whether we raised a sword against it or bowed our heads in prayer before it, one thing was always, everywhere true. Humanity could never, ever stop dreaming of dragons.